Good evening, everyone. Hi, this is Sister Yaffa Bay. Today is Thursday, February the 24th, and I have to say a couple of things prior to beginning. One, for those of you that are coming in on the tail end of things, and this may be your first or second time listening to this particular broadcast, tonight is broadcast number 5. If you would like to hear all of the preceding shows, you would go to blogtalkradio.com, and up in the upper right-hand corner, there's a little bar that you type in what you're searching for. You would put in Yaffa Bay, American Empire Restored, and it will bring up every single one of these particular shows from this series. The first one was January 27th. The next one was February the 3rd. Then we did one on February the 10th. Another was done on February the 17th, and that brings us up to today, show number 5 on February the 24th. For those of you that have been following all along, you are well aware of the fact that I had not yet made a determination as to whether or not I was going to continue to do this show every Thursday night. And I basically let everyone know that it would really depend on the support of the listeners, and I just have to kind of see how I feel. But because this show has a tendency to rub the sense and sensibilities of so many people, and I know there are a lot of listeners out there that really appreciate the work and the research, and, you know, for some of them it's just confirming what they know. For others, it's all new. They've never heard any of it before. But at this point, I'm going to say that I'm not going to be doing this show every Thursday. 8 is the magic number. So as of today, this will be show number 5. I will give 3 more of these shows in a consecutive order, meaning the next 3 Thursdays I will continue to do the show one by one. At this point, unless I see some massively drastic reason to continue, once I hit show number 8, and again, this is show number 5, once I hit show number 8, then I will be resigning myself to doing this only the last Thursday of every month. And I will only do that as long as it seems that anybody really cares what I'm talking about, because I know there are a lot of people that do. But sometimes I get the impression that most people really aren't trying to hear what I'm saying, and I just have better things to do than to deal with the resistance. Now, having said all of that, I owe everyone an apology from the last show, because every now and then I slip up. It doesn't happen often. I think in the years that I've been lecturing and speaking, is it break time?
No, I'm here. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. In the last 5, I think I started speaking in the very first lecture I ever did was in the year 2001, and that was called Piercing the Fog. It is not the Piercing the Fog that everyone sees on YouTube. I never asked to be out in the world. I never uploaded myself to YouTube or anything else. I did, however, allow myself to do interviews, and I'm allowing myself to do these presentations now. What you guys see when you look at YouTube.com under Yaffa Bay that shows Piercing the Fog, that lecture is not called Piercing the Fog. The real title of that particular lecture is Sharing Clarity in Chicago on How to Use the Dictionary. Piercing the Fog is a completely different lecture. It's the very first lecture I ever did, and I was wearing all white in Piercing the Fog. I just wanted to say that. Now, as far as the apology that I owe everyone, last Thursday I made the most ridiculous blunder, and I didn't even realize it. And usually when I make these blunders, I tend to catch them when I repeat it. But I honestly can't believe when I listen to myself that I fixed my mouth to say, and all of you Eddie Bauer fans with your Eddie Bauer cars, you better know that the Bauer changed their name to Rockefeller. Now, that was a blunder. They didn't change their name to Rockefeller, and I know that, and when I was saying it, I was thinking Rothschild. They changed their name to Rothschild. I'm not sure why my mouth said Rockefeller, but so it is. And as much as that blunder was screwed up, I had the nerve to turn around after that and say, and by the way, don't get mixed up about who you're dealing with and what you're dealing with, after I sat there in all my glory and got mixed up. And not one of you called me on that, and that's cool. But that reminds me of the blunder I made when I was in Chicago doing How to Survive the Fall of Rome, when I told everybody, you guys know how we need space, our people require space. Unlike the Chinese, they like to be close up. That was another misspeak. That was a blundered vocalization on my part, because Chinese are accustomed to space as well. I was talking about the Japanese that are the ones that are accustomed to being closed up in relatively small confinement or a small space. However, having said all of that, I apologize again for the error. I went from a blunder to a total F-up. There's a big difference between a blunder and a slip and an F-up, but I've clarified that for everyone's thinking. The Bowers did not change their name to Rockefeller. They changed it to Rothschild. The Rockefellers are Rothschilds. Don't get me wrong. The Rockefellers are Rothschilds, but they're Rothschilds through a female. That's why they didn't carry the name. You know how a lot of females. Are we on break again? See, it's this type of thing that.
No, I'm sorry. It just came on.
All righty. Is the chat room open?
Yes, it is.
Okay. One of the last things we were talking about was the coalesced tribes of Rome. Another correction that I needed to make was when I was speaking to you guys about the Maccabees, or the Hasmoneans, and I was talking about Judas, and then I went into Jonathan. I was giving the train of brothers. I mentioned that Jonathan succeeded his brother Judas, but then after I mentioned that Jonathan was the successor, for some reason I continued talking about Judas and things that Judas had done, but it wasn't Judas, it was Jonathan. Jonathan is the one that made the treaties with Sparta and Rome, not Judas, okay? Because Simon succeeded Jonathan. He didn't succeed Judas. And Jonathan succeeded Judas. So I want to make sure that that's clarified. I have a tendency, because I think very quickly, just like I read very quickly, but I have a hard time at times getting my mouth to get in sync with my brain, and sometimes what I'm thinking is not always what's coming out. But I haven't made very many blunders over the years. I think that's probably about the bulk of them that would matter. Getting back to what we were covering last week about the individuals that are called so-called Jews. Just for the record, Flavius Josephus concocted or coined the term Judaism. Judaism is another way of saying Phariseeism, which became Talmudism, which is also known as rabbinism, okay, or rabbinism. But all of that is really still ancient Phariseeism. And the problem with ancient Phariseeism is that it's about wandering to and fro the earth and doing a lot of damage. Now, Phariseeism, and it's real hard to find Pharisees. I looked in my, the Strong's Exhaustive Concordance didn't say what it should have said. The Columbia Encyclopedia didn't say what it should have said. The dictionaries that I have on magic and things like that didn't say what they should have said. Nothing said what it needed to tell me about what I was looking at until I looked in my 1828 dictionary under Phariseeism, which is what so-called Jesus was complaining about. Phariseeism is a religion that was practiced in ancient Judea, or in Judea when so-called Jesus is supposed to have been living. It is the way of the Pharisees, but the word Pharisees means parash, pariste, and it means perish. And by that, they're saying that Phariseeism is death by violent, tortuous, and painful means. It comes from the word phares, which is spelled P-H-R-E-S, and that's another slip, P-H-A-R-E-S and P-H-A-R-E-Z, which means breach. Now, there are a few different factions of these so-called Jews, and I have to say this because I don't want people to get the wrong impression about people that are classified as Jews, because for some reason there's all this hostility, hatred, and animosity going towards them, and I think a lot of it is fraudulent and erroneous, just like a lot of the hatred and animosity coming towards melanin-rich people, or what people call black or Negro or colored or African-American or African or whatever. The thing is, I think that they have been lied on about a lot of things, like our people have been lied on about a lot of things. And I'm going to give you some of the reasons why. But prior to doing that, I'm going to give you some definitions. And hopefully you guys already know that when you're talking to me or listening to me, you should have paper, pen, dictionary, encyclopedia, Black's Law Dictionary, and Strong's Exhaustive Concordance nearby. The first word I'm going to give you guys is Judas. From here out, when I say Jew, that's what I'm going to be referring to, the people that are called, that I would classify as Judases. Judas is one that is treacherous enough to betray a friend. That's what I'm going to be talking about when I talk about Jew. Now, there's another type called the rabbi, or rabbins, spelled R-A-B-B-I-N-S. The rabbins, or rabbis, adhere to the Talmud, and that's one book that almost needs to be burned. But the Talmud is in opposition to, or the rabbins that follow the Talmud so strictly, is in opposition to another group of so-called Jews called the Karaites, spelled C-A-R-A-I-T-E-S, and sometimes it's spelled K-A-R-A-I-T-E-S. The Karaites, and I could be mispronouncing it, rejected the traditions, and they attacked rabbinical and the Talmudic interpretation of the Bible. Because, again, everybody's coming up out of this Bible. This thing that you guys call the Holy Bible, they're functioning out of the Bible as well. It's just that they have their own interpretations, and they put their interpretations in compilations of several other books. And I think the Talmud is supposed to be approximately 60-plus books. But the other type that I just described was you know what I'm trying to say, Phariism, P-H-A-R-I-S-I-A-S-M. I don't know what's going on with my mouth this evening. I must be kind of fatigued. There's another faction called the Sadducees. The Sadducees are one of the two great religious Jewish parties that arose within the synagogue to oppose the Pharisees, okay? The other one is the Judaic crew, which they might all fall into that, I don't know, but the Judaic bunch, they renounce Christ. Then you have the people that are classified as Hasidim. The Hasidim, they supported the liberators like the Maccabees, and they cherished their sacred, and you know, I told you guys last week that sacred means holy, cursed, and damnable. But they cherished their sacred religious customs of the ancestors and became known as the Pharisees. They are also known as Assyrians, spelled A-S-S-I-D like David, E-A-N like Nevada, S. Now, that is in contradistinction to the Jews that were affected by the Hellenistic influences. And I don't see how that could be, based on the fact that it was this Hellenistic influence, based on my research, that they're saying is supposed to have been saying, you know, sacrifice people. And I don't know if the problem with the Hellenistic crew was the fact that they wanted the sacrifices or if it was more, we know you guys